Hi everyone, welcome to Building the Better Sefton. This is part of our local, national, international kind of theme, and today we're going to look at violence against women and girls globally, but also in reference to Sefton and nationally in the UK. And we've got Lara on again with David, and we're going to have a little chat about these important issues. David mentioned this as a potential topic last week, and then we had a few discussions around it. We've decided that we're going to do something about it. Before we get started, obviously, if you can like and subscribe, share, support us financially on Crowdfunder, Ko-fi.com, or on our Substack platforms. All details are in the notes. It really helps us to get this positive news and interview platform out there. Check out all our other videos and shorts. The more the merrier. And, just want to reinforce this is about positivity, about working together and making Sefton a better place for everyone. Well, thanks anyway for all your ongoing support. We really appreciate it. So, violence against women and girls, sometimes referred to as VAWG, VAWG, is something which does get a lot of media attention at times, but often just seems to be swamped and used in the culture war. So we'll start with Lara. Lara, any thoughts on this issue, violence against women and girls?
Yeah, many thoughts. I think most vulnerable people have experience or something they can talk about, but obviously for women, this is so commonplace that you almost accept it as just part of being alive. I'd like to talk about two experiences that happened to me, which were life-changing. They affected my confidence, my general just day-to-day living, and also my career. Far-reaching effects. The first was I had a stalker for a number of years. It started when I was a teenager through a group of friends. He was on the periphery of that group, and everywhere I went, this guy would be there. And the group of friends, I think, saw it as a bit of a joke at the beginning because it was clear that this guy liked me and would always turn up wherever I was. And it escalated over a number of years to I went to France and he was there. I went to university. He was sending me money and calling the university phone every single day. Then it escalated one step further, and he was outside my house. He was on the roof of the house. He was recording me through the window. And then the final straw was he actually broke into my parents' house when I was there. Luckily, we were all there. He broke in and tried to attack me in the living room. And my stepdad managed to tackle him to the floor, get hold of him, get him out, held him down. We called the police. And the police came, at the time it was Avon and Somerset Police, and they were fantastic. They were incredibly supportive. They took it very seriously. And in fact, they pressed charges because they said it's extremely unusual. Stalking is prolific. It happens all the time. A lot of people get stalked. I don't actually know the figures, but it's very common. But it's really rare that they actually break into your house once he was in the property. That took it to a whole new level. So they chose to press charges on the guy. But when they did that, they then arrested him. They took his computer and they found that he had a shrine to me of things that he's collected over many years. And it was things like he'd buried my underwear in the garden. He had items from my bin. And we realised it'd been going on for years. And that was so completely traumatizing and devastating. You can't, I've never got over it. Just even now, I'm shaking, I'm sweating. A couple of years ago, I had a letter come through the post, and I didn't know who it come from. And it was Valentine's Day, and it said something really sinister inside. It turned out it was from my friend's 7-year-old son as a joke. But I had an absolute panic attack about it. Just leaving the house, I'm scared he's going to be there. I just live in fear all the time. And there were two things that happened afterwards where he had been arrested, but he was, I think, on bail or something. And I don't know what was going on. And I was working in a bar. So this was a few weeks after he'd broken into my house. And he came into the bar holding something long and shiny. And he went straight from the door in a couple of seconds, ran straight to the bar and went to jump over the bar towards me. I was making a coffee. And I just ran into the back, and I never looked back. I didn't look at what the long shiny thing was. So I've lived in fear my whole life of this person, and he haunts my thoughts every day.
Did he get convicted?
He was not imprisoned because at the time we were 21, so I think 21. So he was the same age as me in that group of friends, and my mum was very much of the opinion that, you know, he had his whole life to live. The police wanted to prosecute, and they did press charges, but he wasn't. So I was red flagged, which means if he comes within 100 meters of me, he's immediately arrested, and that's a lifelong thing that if I happen to see him somewhere, I just let them know. But he was later convicted of doing something similar to someone else, I believe. I heard, and he has a few other issues that have transpired with age.
Yeah,
as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, that's absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
Story, and thank you for sharing it. But it's horrendous.
Yeah, I think 1.4 million people experienced stalking within the last year. So just to give some statistics on that, in the year ending March 2025, nearly 11% of adults experienced domestic abuse, sexual assault or stalking. So 3.8 million domestic abuse, 1.4 million stalking, and 900,000 sexual assault. So 1 in 65 people has experienced sexual assault in the UK. And that's with half of the population being male as well. It's staggering.
To men too.
Yeah, it does. Well, do you reckon that 25% of domestic violence is against men? Men are also more likely to be attacked, and obviously there's a huge stigma about men who were sexually assaulted even getting it followed up. And one of the issues I mentioned earlier about the culture war is this idea that, like, as soon as you talk about violence against women and girls, that's somehow anti-man, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's this thing that, oh, you know, men have problems too. So no one's saying they don't. All humans have problems. This reductionism to this world where, oh, you shouldn't just talk about violence against women and girls. You're like, well, what possible basis is there for that? It's coming from like this profound low self-esteem and weakness among certain men. I just do not understand it. But I had a friend who went through something similar to you, and when she described it to me, I said to myself, if that happened to me, I wouldn't be able to enjoy my day. I'd be constantly vigilant.
That's it.
And you've just touched at that, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've lived all these years since I was 21, every single day. Sometimes I wake up in the night, I hear a noise, and I think, oh my God, he's here. I mean, it just follows you literally every time I leave the house. I just I can't put it into words.
Can I say you're incredibly brave, you know, and incredibly strong, because he has stolen so much and got away with so much. But you are incredibly brave.
I was a different person before. I was this incredibly eccentric, confident kid who liked to dress up and be on stage and perform, and all that ended. And I was frightened to just go outside. So the reason I told you that first part was it did happen first, and it framed then everything else that happened in my life. So I've gone through my life frightened and extremely wary, and I guess with a particular fear about men, although it's unfair to categorize all men. But yes, I think it's true, and it also doesn't help that I grew up without a father, and also went to a girls' school. So I think that those things all combined lead to a woman who has limited experience of certain menfolk. So then I became an architect, a young architect, went out into my career, went through working in various architecture practices to gain experience, and then had a period of my life when a friend said, "Oh, come and work for this practice. It's just me and the boss. It's a really lovely little practice." So I thought, okay, that sounds nice. Let's try it. Both were male. On the day of the interview, the boss, who was a guy, probably 60s, as I was showing my portfolio, he was just staring at my hands the whole time. And then every time I was talking about a project in my portfolio, he kept saying how beautiful my hands were, and then he sort of reached out and touched my hands a couple of times, and I was like, this is really weird, but this is my friend's practice. And I'd also moved to a new city to be with this, to try this out. So I was offered the job and I took it. And this boss turned out to be a bit of a Harvey Weinstein kind of character, which, I mean, I really should have seen the warning signs, but I was invited to dinner with him and his wife, and he sat next to me and had his hand on my leg and kept stroking my leg, and I sort of asked him not to do it, and then him and his wife both asked me if I would go and live with them in their house because I was renting. I was like, no, thank you. And this is when I was in my sort of around 30 years old as well, so I was not young and naive. I just thought this was completely bizarre. So already at this point, I was thinking I need to get out of this situation and need to start looking for something else. Unfortunately, my colleague went on a stag week away, and it just escalated to unimaginable heights. I was terrified about him going, and the day that he was gone, this boss, he swooped in and he tried to physically harass me. He tried to grab me. Then he verbally threatened me. He told me that if I told anybody, he was going to destroy my career. And I mean, it's I can't even go into details, but it ended with me running away from the office and hiding in a bike shed, and calling my mum to come and rescue me. She came with a friend, and when we got back, he'd changed the locks, and the boss, and wouldn't let me get back in to collect my stuff, and accused me of all manner of things. Then lawyers got involved, and he did then proceed to try very hard to destroy my career, including finding out where I then went for jobs and calling them up and telling them lies. And this is just followed me, and I just I don't even know what to say. So
Did you have any
here I
support
am,
from...
terrified to go outside, and we're now my confidence is in tatters on the floor, which is why I'm now doing radio shows and podcasts rather than even attempting to go back into the misogynistic world of architecture at the moment.
Well, I'm not surprised, but I always think, you know, at the moment, the situation in Israel-Palestine, I can't look at it, or I read about it in the paper just to keep a bit of a distance from it. And I always think when you hear personal stories, it really does bring it home, the experience and the impact it has on a human life. Yeah. Not just the fact that happened, but then the attempt to destroy it afterwards. His wife even saying, "Oh, come and live with us," and all this stuff. You talk about like Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm not for one moment comparing the case. You know, this like just
very,
assumption.
Very comparable. That was what was going on.
I'm speechless. Did you have any support from the authorities over this?
So no support at all. And in that scenario, I had to get a lawyer, and we tried to fight it. But in the end, my mental health by this point was bottomed out. I was in a state. I had to move back in with my mum for a few months because I was just beside myself. I thought the world was just a horrible place. I did go to the police, and I took along a man with me to sort of give kudos to what I was going to say. A young policeman was the person I had to report it to. He took me into a private room and then just sat there staring at me. And I was like, are you going to get out a notebook and write down what I'm going to say? And he was like, no, just tell me. And I was like, I think you need to like write down who this person is, you know, because this person is an architect. They're a pillar of society. They are well known in this area. You need to know what they're doing and what's going on here. And he absolutely didn't want to know, didn't want to take it seriously, couldn't care less, didn't take any notes. And I left thinking, well, what was the point in reporting it? Like, if another woman gets employed by this practice and then they go and say the same thing, they'll have no record that this is going on. And it clearly was going on repeatedly, because I even found out that there'd been other women working at this practice before who had left mysteriously under similar circumstances. So yes, and that was Leamington Police that I reported that to. So very different experience.
Absolutely horrific, and it backs up this national fact I found out about adult rape. In 2019 to 2020, 55,000 people went to the police to report that they had been raped, and the convictions of 55,000 people going was 1,500.
Yeah.
So that's a 2.6% conviction rate. And it is, as you quite rightly say, one of the problems is how the police deal with that. And that's why Somerset and Avon Police have brought in the Sophia Bluestone project, which is to be more sensitive to the victim, to listen, etc., rather than dismiss. Your experience was horrific, and I think the police actually added to the pain, and they should be there to serve.
Absolutely. No one's going to go forwards and want to report anything if you're met with someone who doesn't even get a notebook out.
Yeah. And also about the law, for adult rape, it's between 4 years and 15. But if I broke into your house and damaged your property, I could get 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think that the message very clearly is, well, it's happening, but the structure, the culture of England and Wales is that it's not really ready to deal with it. To say this is an important, tough issue. I think that's the problem. Not so much it's happening, but it's allowed to happen. And even if, as you have done, you've gone to the police, you've voiced your story, and the feedback is just, well, I'm struggling to find the words. Another example of where it's never respected, right? And I think you can see this in the culture of this country, is when you stand as an MP. Because if you stand as an MP and you are bankrupt, you're not allowed. If you're bankrupt at 20, you're not allowed to be an MP ever again. And that's financial mismanagement, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously. But if you beat up your partner, a woman, then that's okay. And we see this with James McMurdoch from the Reform Party, who, after a night out, pushed his girlfriend down the stairs, left marks on her body, and 2 security guards had to pull him off, and he was convicted. He then lied about it and said it didn't happen, and he didn't declare it, and became a Reform MP, right? When Reform found out, they were like does it matter? It was a long time ago. And he called it a bad mistake. Now, you know, a mistake, the fact he lied, covered it up, the fact that they've got a reform candidate who has got this conviction. He could be Home Secretary one day. He could be in charge of the safety of all women in this country. And they just said, he won't be suspended. He's brilliant. And we need to move on. And I think for reform, that just shows that, you know, it's not going to get better if we have such a forgiving, sympathetic approach to males who attack women. I am going to start a petition, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, that actually, to stand as an MP, you cannot have a conviction for violence.
At the time of the Edward Colson thing and all the statues, they said you can be locked up for longer for attacking a statue than for attacking a woman. And it's these long-term structural problems and this kind of patriarchy within just the whole thing. As soon as like the police heard, property was involved. And I mean, if you challenge financial system or property, they are the real pillars of society. Exactly. Don't be messing with our land. Don't be messing with our finances, the elite say. But, other things, we'll let them slide. You know, they're not particularly important.
Yeah.
It's just staggering. I mean, I did a lot of casework for a teaching union a few years ago. And some of the things I saw, not necessarily to do with violence against women and girls, but, just structural stuff and, people signing non-disclosures and stuff. And you think, wait there's some terrible things going on here. Being very careful what I say. And it's just allowed to go on. I mean, some of those cases you mentioned earlier, like child abuse and, people sign NDAs and get payoffs. And then people just keep going on abusing in powerful institutions because they're wealthy and stuff. And you're thinking, I mean, the current thing with Epstein and that scandal is ongoing. But again, this is just scratching the surface of what's really going on in society and what the deeper structures are. And I just find this current thing about, Andrew Tate and this kind of anti-feminist kind of thing, that toxic masculinity, in order to be a proper man, you've got to be an anti-feminist to control women and all that. The culture war's almost trying to bury all this stuff. And it's almost like, the big part, we'll do this, but we'll keep it on the quiet because everyone's going on about, immigration and all that. That they're not even acknowledging these issues. But I think that's a huge problem we've got. And there's so many cases that we hear of, but also so much stuff that we don't hear of. And when you go into the police and they're not even writing down a lot of what you said, I don't know, I'm just absolutely appalled.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to make a point about that because it was really appalling. And now being a little bit older and wiser, I'd really like to go back and make an example of that. But unfortunately, I don't know the name of the particular police officer who was involved. If I did, I would go and have words. But like what you were just saying, Tim, I was thinking it's not, the main problem is not just because women specifically tend to be physically weaker. It's to do with these long-standing patriarchal gender inequalities like access to information, education, training, even mobility in terms of like whether or not they drive. I mean, it's like a lot of women are just in weaker positions right from the outset because society has made that the case. They don't have the access, don't have the information, they don't have the higher level reach.
I came across an interesting thought was that the rise of anti-feminism by young male, and I just heard this, so I'm still processing it, is that they are no longer marriageable because women don't want an extra mouth to feed, right? They've got their own lives and they're getting on with those. So marriage isn't a compulsory option. Does that make sense? So where often males were looked after in the past, they're not now. What do you think of that?
I mean, that sort of harks back to what we were talking about before, the Charlie Kirk argument and his views on women's place being in the home. And I know there's plenty of people who may enjoy that lifestyle and that's what they want, but the whole point is having freedom to choose and just women being given the options of whatever they want to pursue. And that luckily we have that in this country and in this time. But like with my own experience, there was me trying to break into a male dominated field thinking, oh, I've got this, you know, I'm 6 foot tall, I'm going to be fine. And I was destroyed by the system.
And I wonder if, because the system is challenged, the reality is the violence against women and children. Does that make sense? That we're wondering why, and it's because are they daring, when they dare to leave the kitchen in our supposed modern society, there are far too many obstacles by the patriarchy to drive them back. Because I feel all the fathers in the country, right, would want their daughters to thrive. And I can't understand how anyone, any male, would choose the patriarchy over the happiness and the rights and the well-being of women.
So what do you think that is? Why do they? Because they do.
I think one I always think is follow the money, that the patriarchy pays a lot of, you know, so that's how they make the money with the old boy network.
Yep.
So people are just choosing money over family or morality. Secondly, perhaps they've been raised to see their traditional roles as who they are, as their identity, and when that's taken away, they don't know who they are. But you can still be successful and creative and contribute to society. I don't feel threatened as a male by any woman. I don't see, and if I didn't get a job but a woman did, I don't see that as an issue at all. People do say, oh well, tick box, diversity, etc. But that's, I think, again, just this driving the woman back to the home.
I think it's very deep, and I think that the systems and structures and groupthink, traditions, etc. I think that I sometimes look at the older generation with more defined gender roles and think that's not just a prison for one, it's a prison for all. And I also think that things being more fluid and changing at a much faster rate produces a lot of uncertainty. We've got cost of living, Brexit, all these things going on at the moment, populism. And again, I think it all fundamentally comes down to low self-esteem. So I'm not going to blame someone with a different coloured skin to me or a different religion for my problems. I'm not going to blame women for my problems. It's complicated. And people are just looking for an easy answer, aren't they? Like, oh, it's feminism. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And this idea as well that, like, oh, it's a threat to masculinity. Would you want to go back to that old way of doing things? Like, you know, the male goes out and works and does a particular role. I wouldn't want to live like that old traditional role. I want far more from life too. And it's this kind of low self-esteem, low confidence, let's blame people who are different and weaker. That's easy to do. That's far more easy to do. And it fits in nicely with identity politics as well. This kind of like, you know, this is who I am, this is how I view the world, you can't change me, you know, leave me alone, I've got my opinions, so what if I'm traditional? You know, it's identity politics, and I reject it.
But I do think that we're not going to solve or make really significant headway with the violence against women and girls unless we change the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if the police don't change, if society is still based and allowing males to have more privilege, more access, then it's not going to change.
It's just a vicious cycle, and it's never ending, and it's so deep rooted though. I mean, and it affects everything. It's like the fact that as a kid I never saw a female footballer. So people be like, do you like football? I'd be like, no, because I've never seen myself represented in football ever. And then it's only in the last like 5 years or so do you actually even see female football shown on TV. And then we had that whole thing with the commentators saying, oh, we can't have a female commentator, what do they know, they don't know the offside rule, and laughing about female footballers. And it's like, even the fact that even that is shown on general television, and then that becomes the populist view, and it just feeds itself. It's like, oh, nobody be interested in going to see a female football player match, so it just self-perpetuates. And then there's people celebrating now that the women are doing so well, and I'm just so angry about it, because it's like, it's taken to me being in my 40s before that even became a thing, before you even ever heard of one. And it's like every child can name a male football player, but you might be lucky if they remember Jill Scott. So it's in every aspect of society, from fun and games all the way to politics. There's so much to change. Sorry.
And I also think, if you look at the fashion industry, of what is expected of men and what is expected of women, all the money women have to, or encouraged to spend in their makeup, their hair, their clothes, etc., and that is incredibly draining on their income, and they're not empowered, I feel, in the sense that everyone can dress how they like, but then when they're out in the real world, in inverted commas, they have to act in a certain way. I think we're moving less away from ladylike, but I always thought ladylike was a term for powerless. We were raised with stories like Pollyanna.
Yep.
Now, she was outspoken, she was a tomboy, and she ended up as a paraplegic.
Yep.
And that was a very clear message.
Teaching you a lesson.
Yes. And My Fair Lady is very popular because at the end of the day, Liza is ornamental and speaks well. She doesn't achieve much else.
I was just
and
talking
it's a
the
great
other day.
success.
It was when I was a kid, and I read some of the Enid Blyton books, like The Folk of the Faraway Tree. And for my mum's generation, that was a book that they absolutely loved, and it's one of my mum's favourite books as a kid. When I read it, I was just so offended. So it's basically like this group of kids, like, oh, we're going up this amazing tree. All the girls, you go home now and help mum in the kitchen. We're going to go up the tree and have an adventure. And I was like, what? So I actually stopped reading it after about an eighth of the way through, because I was just infuriated by the fact that girls were just not included in the fun. So I heard they're making a remake of that, and so I hope they're going to sort that out.
Why even revisit that? Why not tell modern stories?
Yeah.
We're always going back. Pride and Prejudice, such a lovely romance, but actually Elizabeth Bennet doesn't do anything. She goes for walks and falls in love, and that's the expectation. And I just think we need more modern stories to reflect who we are, because I think in storytelling we try to understand the modern condition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Lara Croft.
And I think also, I think it's interesting how much things change. The culture can change over time, but also, again, referencing the culture war, the pushback. Roe v. Wade in the United States, the so-called land of the free, and some of the backsliding we've seen there. Just in other news, though, I just wanted to mention that in the last year, there's been a 4% reduction in domestic abuse recorded. However, there are a few other issues that we need to bear in mind. One is underreporting. I think Laura's story about the police officer you went to speak to in the second case is very interesting. That's if you even get to that stage. But there may be a lot of underreporting to the police. Also, police data limitations. The government is constantly, I know that the current government, the Labour government, are a bit concerned about things like what the Office of Budget, what are they called? The Office of Budget and Statistics, the OBS. Anyway, a lot of concerns about where the data's coming from. Is it accurate? How do you count it? And that can be a big issue as well. And also government approach to things. Now, the government is talking about a 10-year goal to halve violence against women and girls. We know that the Police and Crime Commissioner locally, Emily Spurrell from Merseyside, it is something which is quite big in some of the local areas. So we listened to a good podcast, didn't we, in the week about in Yorkshire, the new approaches they're taking to violence against women and making sure that the messages get out there. I know in schools in recent years, I taught things like what harassment is, what's acceptable in relationships. There is some stuff like that going on. There's still a lot of work to do, obviously. And if the government and local authorities, police and crime commissioners are coming up with like, oh, this is what we need to be doing, here's what we're going to provide, that's one thing. But the actual change on the ground in behaviour is another thing entirely. And I've seen some, what I would call, you know, when you get men in groups, soldiers in war, that kind of thing. We know that there are extremes, but I've seen people commenting and behaving in a certain way in public, which I thought, I don't think I would have a friend who I would accept that behaviour from. And we need to also just bear in mind that not all men are responsible, but ultimately men need to change the way that they view women and the way they behave, and it's how we do that as well. Fundamentally, men need to change the way they behave and the way that they view women, and it's about how we get that message across.
I would agree, because I would say you can still be a man without hitting a woman.
Yes, that's surprising, isn't it?
That's the reality. You can be any man you want to be. We've got to totally divorce the violent tendencies. I came across this question, this philosophical question that they asked many women around the world. And can I just say that around the world, violence against women, as we all know, it is a big issue.
Huge.
You know, so it's not just England and Wales. If a woman was left in the forest with a bear or a man, who would she choose? And the most popular response was the bear, because the bear would only kill her, but the man could torture, rape, and then kill her. That's the reality. And that's why our laws and our structures should be there to protect people.
When you're just saying about it sort of affecting obviously all women around the wider world as well, I was reading an article yesterday from the UN, from the 2025 UN Spotlight Brief, which was talking about climate change and the impact specifically that it has on women, because women take on most of the social and economic stress, like collecting food and water and fuel. They report a 28% increase of violence against women and girls in heat waves generally across the world. So that's just interesting to note.
Yet there are huge global issues. I mean, in some countries, just like giving birth is literally a roll of a dice. And, you know, there are still huge ongoing problems in war zones, the threat of sexual violence as well. Just awful. I know from when I did trade union casework as well, sometimes you get really complex cases that require a lot of evidence and investigation. And a lot of police officers will be thinking on the front line, there's going to be a lot of work here. And that's where the structures need to change in how we deal with those cases. So just going back to what the Police and Crime Commission has done locally across Merseyside, over the last couple of years, this might be a year old now, we've had trauma-informed training delivered them to more than 17 182 police officers and staff to improve their interactions with victims. 131 schools trained to have age-appropriate conversations on misogyny, sexual harassment and peer-on-peer abuse, and 131 schools taking part in a Send Me a Selfie training delivered by the Aerial Trust. 52,000 employees now have access to a domestic abuse workplace champion, and there are 33 new 360-degree cameras in public places. There's been 800,000 to tackle domestic abuse through early intervention programs, 3.2 million committed to support survivors of sexual violence, nighttime bus returns to the region aimed at making women and girls feel safer. More than 200 professionals have undertaken Surveillance UK's honour-based abuse training, domestic abuse refresher training for all lawyers and specialists, training for all rape and serious sexual offence prosecutors, and more than 440,000 for projects focused on safer streets. Now, this may all be very good, but it's what's happening in the homes, in people's minds, the way they view things. And there's still a long way to go. And another thing as well, we often hear is, oh yeah, we're putting some money towards that. How is that assessed, the impact on the front line? And again, making officers aware of things is one thing. Officers then having to spend 12 to 24 hours investigating something when they've already got a big workload, that's another thing entirely. So there are a lot of ongoing issues that we need to be aware of. And I will share some details about services you can access in Sefton in the podcast notes as well.
One other thing I was going to say was just there you were talking about the research, where you get these figures and facts from. And it's a bit of a side note that my husband is a lecturer, and last year he was part of the university equalities awareness team. And he came home and told me that he was completely shocked to discover that although women take up about 48% of research, the research bubble in the UK generally for the people who are producing research and producing journal articles, only 17.8% of journal articles are credited to women, with 82.1% being credited to men, because men are more likely to be in the positions of power, and then they're more likely to credit or approve authorship of other fellow male colleagues. And so the research itself is highly swayed and dominated towards the male spectrum. So it's just like it's a losing battle all the time, whatever.
There's some very interesting historical cases of that, isn't there, with like big scientific breakthroughs, people behind the scenes doing the research and getting very little credit for it.
Yeah.
And still ongoing with those kinds of little hierarchies in the workplace. Still a lot of unconscious stuff going on, and conscious. And I mean, it just works at so many levels, this. And I just want to say very, very categorically, and I don't know why I need to say this, but to look at issues that affect women and girls and to be aware of them, to be woke, if you like, to be aware of facts and issues that exist in society, is not anti-men. It's pro-human, and we're all better if we have less exploitation, less inequality, and more rights for people in society. And I don't know why I have to say that. And if that makes me woke, then okay, maybe the definition of woke, this like McCarthyist definition of anything that isn't strictly far right is communist, that we had in the US in the 1950s. It seems to be that's what wokeism's become now, this label for anyone who's not far right, to just say, oh, you're woke. It just shuts down discussion. It's anti-intellectual. Yes. And it locks us all up in the same prison, if you ask me.
One other thing I'd say is, after what happened to me with the stalker, I went and trained in martial arts for 10 years, and that gave me a sense of power. And I've only had to use it a handful of times. So I would recommend that. If you've got a daughter, send them to martial arts. And if you've got a son, just train them to be self-confident and to be respectful.
You know, there's that the universal sign if you're in trouble, etc. Which I haven't had to learn as male, but when you are out, how do you keep safe? And all that should be, I think, a much bigger priority than grammar. So I think the school curriculum needs to empower girls, and equally it needs to look at how we raise our lads not to be misogynists. I was quite shocked when I had one year 11 class that went, oh, well, you know, girls and rape, they always say they didn't, but they did. And you always expect that from one or two lads, but it was quite a big majority, just dismissing rape as he said, she said. And that was really worrying. So I think more lessons on consent and that need to be done. But the current teachers didn't come into the profession to do that. So they need a lot more training, and we need specialists, and we need to review the school curriculum so that it actually offers a much more optimistic and safer future for all children.
Thank you so much, Laura, for opening up and for sharing your experiences. I know that takes a lot. And I think here in the personal side, it puts the statistics and the general awareness into perspective. I will share some information in the notes if anyone needs any help in Sefton locally with some of these issues that we've discussed. Thanks, David, for your input as well. Please do support us and share this, and hopefully, you know, in a few years' time, we can say there's been more improvements and that things are getting better, and that we are getting a better Sefton as well. So thanks for coming on, Laura and David. Have a great day. I'll just do the end music. And then we can log off. Cheers, folks.
Yeah, okay.
So.